Okay. Rancho Bernardo, which is, right down the street here from us. They're talking about putting in a cannabis dispensary. There's a company called Urbn Leaf, you see all these cannabis companies advertising, billboards all over San Diego. And this company, Urbn Leaf, wants to move into the location where, you remember the old El Torito in Rancho Bernardo? It's kind of, right off of Bernardo Center Road or Drive, and it's near the 15 freeway, and it's that really long, narrow parking lot that goes way in the back, and there's an El Torito back there that has been empty for forever. I mean, it's been empty how long? At least 10 years it's been empty. And now someone wants to move in, and they want to put in this place to sell legal marijuana, right? And boy, the people in Rancho Bernardo are really worried about this. So apparently they had a hearing before the city of San Diego to have this approved, and then for some reason it got postponed till November 2nd. But meanwhile, the Rancho Bernardo Community Planning Board is already getting organized that they're going to appeal the decision if it gets approved by the city of San Diego. They've already taken a preliminary vote. The Planning Commission for Rancho Bernardo has already voted 7-4 to appeal the decision. So they're getting all their ducks in a row to fight this. So apparently now this hearing is going to happen on November 2nd. And one of the members of the Rancho Bernardo Planning Commission that filed the appeal was a guy named Patrick Batten. And I was reading, I was like, Patrick Batten, I mean, that name sounds familiar. Where have I heard that? And I go, oh yeah, he's one of the candidates that's running for Poway Unified School Board. He's the one that's in Area C that's taking, I guess there's 3 candidates that are running in Area C to take over the seat that is currently occupied by TJ Zane. And so that's Patrick Batten. So he's already on the RB Planning Commission. He's one of the front people trying to fight this marijuana dispensary. And he's also, just as an aside, he's the candidate running it for Poway Unified School Board. He's the military veteran. I think it was in the Marines. And he's got strong support from the Republican Party. Most every major Republican political politician, from Kevin Faulconer to Darrell Issa to TJ Zane to so many others, he's already got their endorsement. So he's kind of like the Republican endorsed candidate for that particular position. And he wants to make Poway Unified brilliant at the basics. So he's all about pretty much the 3 R's, right? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. So he's really active. I didn't know that he was on the RB Planning Commission. So he's fighting the charge against this. And so the controversy, really, what they're bringing up is that they're saying it's too close to a church. And, there's a rule that says that you can't be within 1,000 feet. A marijuana dispensary cannot be within 1,000 feet of a school or a church. And so the question is how do you measure 1,000 feet? Is it as the crow flies, or is it based on the path that you have to walk? And this is actually coming into play on this. It's really interesting. So apparently what they did is they tried to measure it on Google Maps, and it was pretty close. That it was, if it was within 1,000 feet as the crow flies. So what they did is they built a wall, or they built a fence to sort of redirect the walking path in between where the church is and where the homeowners live, to get to this dispensary, so that it ends up being over 1,000 feet. So, they're kind of playing the game to be compliant with this. But of course, that a lot of people are saying foul, you're blocking a normal access way that had been used by a lot of the people in our neighborhoods, and you're manipulating the system. And that's part of this. But it seems like the objection is ultimately that they don't want it in Rancho Bernardo. I mean, it's kind of like in Poway. They don't want marijuana dispensaries in Poway. Mayor Steve Voss has said that publicly, and so have other members of our city council. My hunch is that the people in RB, whether they're homeowners or on the planning commission, they don't want it either. But they're using the rules to find a way to block it. Now, of course, the city of San Diego has to approve it first. And the objection is coming from the Hope United Methodist Church, which is, if you know where that is, it's kind of like on Bernardo Center Drive. There's like the McDonald's and there's that Clock Tower Plaza. In fact, my dentist is in that Clock Tower Plaza. I've been there more times than I can count. And it's across the street from that. So it's sort of like, it's not in that really long shopping center with the really long parking lot. It's like another door down. So it's further north than even the Rancho Viejo taco shop. So it's up there. And apparently that's where the church is located. And they're getting objections from the church. They're getting objections from homeowners that live nearby. And Robin Kaufman, if you don't know who Robin Kaufman is, she chairs just about every committee in Rancho Bernardo. She's definitely a community dynamo, a community activist, community leader in Rancho Bernardo. For years, she's been involved with these commissions. And she said, the community strongly objects to overall appropriateness of the proposed project at this location, noting that there are minor-oriented businesses within 1,000 feet, and these include the Kumon Learning Center and the Dress to Dance store. And she also mentioned that families frequent these restaurants in the shopping center, and there's a marijuana dispensary where all these families go and have dinner. And now Marnie Von Wilpert, who is the city council member, the San Diego city council member, she's now chiming in. And she said through one of her spokespeople that she understands that even after staff responses, the community is still uncomfortable with the proximity to sensitive uses and how the measurements were applied. Okay, that's actually a fair point. There is some manipulation about how they're doing the measurements, because remember, they built a wall or a fence to redirect a pathway, so it was over 1,000 feet away from the church. And Marnie Von Wilpert went on to say, because of these concerns, actually the spokesperson for Marnie Von Wilpert said, because of these concerns, Councilmember Von Wilpert would like to request that the measurements be rechecked to confirm their accuracy and should ensure that all aspects are in compliance. Her preference would be that the applicant hire a third-party engineer to verify the measurements and submit those to the Development Services Department for review. Okay. Now, what do you think? Do you think that they should allow a cannabis dispensary to sell legal marijuana in Rancho Bernardo, zip code 92128? What do you think? Let me know on the live stream. You can type them in Facebook or on YouTube. Let me tell you one man's opinion. I'll channel a little bit of hacksaw here. One man's opinion on this. This is what I think. Okay, number one is this is nuts. The whole thing is bananas. Okay, there still is this reefer madness mentality that some people still have about marijuana. That it's like this devil drug, that it's something that needs to be feared, that it's some kind of terrible voodoo. And come on, people, this is the year 2022. We're in the 21st century. We're not in 1930, whatever, when the movie, Reefer Madness came out. So it's a medicine. Cannabis is a medicine. It's marijuana is used by people to treat PTSD from veterans that are coming back from these wars that are dealing with all kinds of heavy mental issues. Marijuana helps relieve the conditions related to PTSD. It helps people with epileptic seizures. Marijuana helps relieve anxiety. It helps with attention deficit disorder. It reduces inflammation. It helps treat depression. Marijuana treats glaucoma. Marijuana relieves chronic pain, and the chronic pain associated with chemotherapy, as well as the nausea and vomiting related to chemotherapy. It also slows the development of Alzeimer's. It's a medicine, people. We need to understand what this is and quit having this fear of marijuana. We know so much more about it. It's natural. It's a plant, for Christ's sake. So, it's remarkable that there still continues to be so much resistance to this, even though society has really turned the page. So now the other crazy part about this whole story is that, of course, in that area on Bernardo Center Drive, there are a lot of other churches that are nearby. There's the church at Rancho Bernardo. There is a church called His Dwelling Place. There's another church called the Cove at CRB. These are all Christian churches, and they're all right there. And they are really close to restaurants that sell alcohol, and they're really close to retailers that sell booze, that sell alcohol, that were retailers where you can buy a fifth of vodka or gin, or you can buy a case of beer. And they're right there. And alcohol is so much more harmful to people than cannabis. I mean, it's not even close. And then besides, that used to be an El Torito that had a huge bar that people went there for happy hour. And now they want to put in a cannabis dispensary that's selling medicine, and people are freaking out about it. And it's like, come on. We need to evolve here. Now, and on top of this, in America, this is the United States of America, where there's supposed to be a separation of church and state. But now the churches have rules set aside for them that give them special privileges that are not afforded to other private businesses. So it's not only that we have an integration of church and state, but the church gets priority. Come on. I mean, this is just crazy, just crazy. So here's some comments from Amanda Scheifen Matamala, and she says, I live in Temecula, and there are many places around here that sell marijuana, and you wouldn't even know it. These dispensaries have not caused extra crime, vehicle accidents, etc. There's not any weirdos walking around. So I really think people don't understand what marijuana is, or just really have fed into some wrong information. I think the ones that are fighting this in Rancho Bernardo need to stop and take a step back and further their research. It's ridiculous, the claims they're making. Hear, hear. Bravo, Amanda. I totally agree. I mean, this is crazy. And Amanda goes on to say, I remember a while back, some were making a big deal about Hooters being put in. Oh, I remember that. I went to the Hooters once. Hooters is ridiculous. But it's like a train wreck. You just can't help but look. But I remember going there once, and because there aren't, if you want to go out, and this is back, I think, before the Urge was built in RB, and you want to go out and have a drink with a friend, and there aren't very many places in Rancho Bernardo to do that. And I remember sort of maybe against my better judgment recommending to a friend, hey, let's go to Hooters. And it was deader than a doornail in there. I mean, it just wasn't very exciting, that's for sure. But it didn't last long. But I mean, ridiculous to try to ban it. I mean, it just ended up losing out of its own accord, where customers just didn't go. But this is crazy. This whole business about banning a dispensary that sells medicine. Like Allen Iverson, we talking about medicine here. We ain't talking about the game. We're talking about medicine. We're not talking about hard drugs. We're talking about medicine. And you know what? Right now, there are a lot of people that are dealing with chronic pain out there for any variety of reasons. Maybe they're dealing with long COVID. Maybe they are suffering from PTSD. Maybe they had a sports-related injury or an injury at work. And when people have chronic pain, what have they done historically? They were getting overprescribed with opioids, right? And we had the whole opioid crisis. Now imagine if instead they had easy access to marijuana, they wouldn't need to go get opioids. I mean, they might need the opioids originally, like right after they had their surgery. But, after a few weeks, they could use marijuana to ease their pain and do so safely. But people want to block it. And so what did they ended up doing? They shut down and made it really hard to get now opioids, which I kind of understand. I mean, those are fiercely addictive. I remember, gosh, it was about 20 years ago. I think I told the story. 20 years ago, I fell off the roof of my house putting up Christmas tree lights when I lived out on Garden Road, way in the southeast corner of Poway. And I'm lucky to be alive. I fell and landed on the concrete driveway, and I was in the hospital for like a week, and I was out of work for 3 months, and it was bad. And I was on Vicodin, and as I was starting to kind of feel a little better, I could feel the urge to want the Vicodin because it's so addictive. But thankfully, I was able to ease myself off. But a lot of people struggle with that. But imagine if they had access to marijuana, they wouldn't be having as much of a crisis with opioids. And now, by the way, now they've really clamped down on opioids, making it really hard to get that. So what ends up happening? Now people are overdosing on fentanyl because they don't have as easy of access to other pain relief medications. I mean, gosh, there's another podcaster. Maybe you know about Dave and Jeff, Dave Poway and Jeff Dotseth. They do a great sports podcast. And Dave Paulay's son died of a fentanyl overdose, and it was accidental. You know, people, they get these drugs on the street. You don't know where it's coming from. It gets cut and laced with fentanyl. And the next thing you know, it doesn't take barely any at all to take, game over, to kill you. And that's happening. And it's tragic. And it's because people don't have access to safe pain relievers like cannabis. And now Rancho Bernardo wants to block this cannabis dispensary called Urbn Leaf from going in. And I mean, in the 70s, I remember it was marijuana was voodoo, but we know so much more about it. And you know what? We would know even more about the benefits, the health benefits of cannabis, if the federal government would take it off of the Schedule I narcotics list, which is insane. I mean, doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat, they always keep it on the Schedule I narcotics list rather than taking it off that list and opening it up for more research to the health benefits of this plant, this natural medicine. Okay. I think enough of my soapbox. Now, this, by the way, is not really a hot topic on the Poway election cycle. When you're talking to people, talking to other candidates, they're worried about Poway road development. They're worried about parks and crime and fire prevention and a lot of other things. You don't hear much talk about this because I think Poway, as long as we have our current city council, which is, 5 people, all of generally pretty similar minds, I don't think there's ever going to be a change in that policy. In my opinion, marijuana dispensaries should be allowed. I mean, we have liquor stores in Poway. We have liquor stores in Rancho Bernardo, but they won't allow a dispensary that sells medicine. I mean, come on. So anyways, it was one of the bigger stories on the cover of on PomeradoNews.com. So I'll include a link to the story. But this is something I've talked about before on my podcast that I just feel really strongly about. And by the way, I don't use marijuana. I have an occasional martini, and that's about it. I'm not a marijuana user at all, but it just seems silly that it's just not legal. I mean, we learned that with alcohol prohibition. I mean, when alcohol was prohibited in the 1920s, crime went up, deaths went up, gang distribution of the product. And then once it was legalized, then suddenly there was a lot less chaos, a lot less death, less criminal element associated with it. It's just crazy. And by the way, marijuana dispensaries, they're not even allowed to use a bank. I mean, come on. It's just, okay, enough of that. All right. So we talked a little bit about the Poway election cycle. I told you I got a bunch of interviews set up, and I'm really excited about this.